we will start learning about repetition structures in Python. In that video, we will understand how and when for loops should be used. We will also learn how to control the for loop execution using the break and continue statements. After that, we will understand how nested loops work and how to deal with them. Finally, we will combine all the new concepts and solve two exercises. The idea of for loop is to repeat a block of statements by a specified number of times. Imagine we are throwing a party and we want to welcome our guest. We can do that by the for loop structure, and the syntax is quite easy. You first type the keyword for, and now you give a variable, and that variable I would like you to think as an iterator variable. So you specify your variable name, we use the in reserved keyword, and now a sequence. The sequence can be different data types, but we're gonna be use list. So guest is a list, and now we have for person in guest. What is happening here? So person will be assigned to each element of the list on each loop iteration. Let me just save that code and run it, and we're gonna see what is happening. Now you see that we just get welcome Walt, welcome Jesse, welcome Mary, all the way up to welcome Lauren. Let's have a look at one numerical example. I'll comment the generic example and bring the numerical one. Alright, we have two lists, odd numbers and even numbers. We want to populate all the even numbers which are less than 10 into the even number list. How to do that? We can use the for structure or the for loop and say for odd, and again here you can choose whatever name you want. I'm just using odd because that's going to be an odd number. And then for odd in odd numbers, so in the first iteration it's going to be 1, then 3, then 5, up to 9. And now, once I start, we have the for block defined. And for each iteration, those two statements will be executed. The first one, we assign odd minus 1. That's going to be in the first iteration 0, in the second iteration 2, and then 4, 6, and 8. Now, we want to get that variable and append to that list. If you didn't know that we could append that to the list, we should check the list, or you should check the video about the list. Alright, in the end, once we iterate over all the elements, we'll just go out of the for block, and then we can print odd numbers, which is the initial list, and finally the even numbers. Let's run it. I clean my screen and run my code. Now look what I get. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 is the odd numbers, and then we get now 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, which is exactly what we are looking for. If you are still unsure of how for loop works, let's then print every iteration. I'll say print the even variable, and then I also want to check how that list is developing. And now in the end of the for block, I want to print out of the for block, and we finally print those lists, the odd number list and the even number list. Let me just clean that script and run it. What we get, our first iteration even is assigned to 0, then we append it to the even numbers list. The next iteration even is assigned to 2, and then it's also added or appended to the list, and so on. And our final iteration even is assigned to 8, and then it is appended to the even number list. Now, how can I be sure that we are out of the block? First, we are out of the block because we get that print here, but we can also be sure because we just reached the maximum number of elements of the odd number list. And finally, we print odd numbers and even numbers. To summarize, each iteration of the for loop will execute all the statements from the loop block, and there will be as many iterations as the length of the sequence we are iterating over. Now, I'll show you that we can change the execution flow, either by forcing the break of the loop or forcing the next iteration to start. Let me show you how to break out of for loops. When you have a list and you want to iterate over it, you'll be using for loops. You just type for, the variable you want to assign each element of that list, so please choose a name or choose a variable which makes sense. So in that case, as I'm going to loop in nationalities, and every element is a nationality, that's the name of my variable. And then I just type for nationality in nationalities, print each of those nationalities. If I just save that script and run that code, I get then from British to Spanish. All right, now what if I want to break that code or break that for loop in case I match, for instance, Greek? Once I find Greek, I want to stop that loop. Therefore, Spanish will not be printed. What can you do? You can just add a conditional statement and say if nationality is equal to the variable I want to look for. In that case, that variable is assigned to Greek, and I just print, let's print, there you are, and then I break. You just type break, and that's it. Once I clean my screen and run it, look, now I find Greek, so it's gonna be again from British all the way up to Greek, and then I have there you are. Look, there is still Spanish, but no, Spanish is not displayed. Why? Because I forced the loop to break. How? Using the break statement. Let's use now Danish. I just change here, Danish, save that code, run it again, and now you see you run from British to Danish, and then we get there you are, and now the loop is broken. The continue statement forces the loop to start the next iteration. In this example, we have a variable called days, and we assign to that a list from Monday to Sunday. Now, if I want to iterate over that list, we use the for loop. We say for day in days, print day. If I run that code, we get Monday, Tuesday, all the way up to Sunday. Now, I want to give a conditional statement, and if that condition is matched, I don't want to break the for loop. I just want to force the for loop to start the new iteration. How to do that? I will just add my conditional statement. If day is equal to, let's say, Wednesday, then you just jump to the next iteration. If I now run it, we get Monday, Tuesday. Notice that Wednesday is not printed. Why? Because that condition here is satisfied, so it returns true, and then we type continue. So the body of that conditional statement is just executed, and we just start the new iteration. And that's the way you can have more control over the for loop. A nested loop refers to a loop inside another loop. In this example, we have two lists, numbers and letters. Now we want to create a nested loop and print each number and each letter. How to do that? We already know a way to iterate over numbers. We do for number in numbers, print number. That's simple. Now we want to add our inner loop. How to do that? After the colon, I press enter. You see that we got indented. And now I type for letter in letters. And now I want to print not only number, but also letter. I save it. The whole inner loop will be executed for each outer loop iteration. Let me show you. If I save that code and run it, what we get? 1A, 1B, 1C. Now the outer loop gets the new iteration, and then we get 2A, 2B, 2C, and then again the outer loop goes to the next iteration, and then we get 3A, 3B, and 3C. You need to understand that every time you have 4 inside 4, you basically assign the first element to the number, and then you complete solve, or you have all the execution of that inner loop, and then you start the next iteration of the outer loop. All right, what I want to test now is your knowledge using nested list and the break and continue statements. Now, let's check if you understood everything. Let's combine that idea of nested loop with break and continue statement. The example is the same I just showed you. The only difference is I added a conditional statement, and now I'm checking if letter is equal to B. And if that returns true, I just break. Now, when I print number and letter, what are you expecting to get? stop the video and then think about it and come back to the solution. When you start executing the outer for loop, number will be assigned to 1. And then, when you start executing the block of that outer loop, letter will be assigned to A. There is that conditional statement, and then you check. If letter is equal to B, break. That's not the case, then we will print number, now 1, and letter A. What is the next iteration of the inner for loop? Is B. B is going to be assigned to letter, and that conditional statement here will return true. Therefore, it will break the inner for loop. What's going to happen? The outer for loop will be iterated. What is the next number? 2. Then we're going to have 1A, 2A, 3A. Again, the break is related to its for loop. It's going to break that for loop here, the nested for loop. Let's just run it. Python, exercise, and there you are. You have 1A, 2A, 3A. Now, what's going to happen if I just change from break to continue? I type continue. If I run that code, what we're going to get? The idea is the same, but the only difference is now I will not break the inner loop. I will just force the next iteration to start. Before we got 1A, 2A, 3A, but now we get 1A. We're gonna now assign B to letter, and that if statement will return true, and then we force the next iteration, which is gonna be C. So C is assigned to letter, and then we're gonna have printed on the screen number, which is 1, and the letter, in that case C. So you're gonna get 1A, 1C, 2A, 2C, 3A, and 3C. Let's run it. And that's exactly what we get, 1A, 1C, up to 3A, 3C. There are much more we can do with for loops. It's common to see for loops combined with range and enumerate functions. I will explain them along that series. For now, try to understand when you need to use for loop, nested loops, and the break and continue statements. And that's everything I had to say. Thank you for watching.